What do you think is what do you think is really happening in this world? Like, most conventional people are under the impression that it's if you have depression or anxiety or some sort of illness, it's either you caught a bacteria or you have neurotransmitter imbalance. What do you feel if you had to take a big step back and see it all? Do you think it's a matter of light versus dark? What's the biggest scope you can say that's happening on the world?
Well, of course, that's I could give many answers to that, but I think light versus dark is the shortest way of expressing it. I in different lectures that I give, so I make it very clear. We don't have to go into the details. In Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian mystic that was very active in the early part of the last century, the founder of Waldorf schools and biodynamic farming and a completely new kind of alternative medicine. He predicted, that towards the end of last century and the beginning of the century, there will be a movement driven by big corporations to take the soul away from people, to disconnect people from the higher world. And in order to do that, we have to destroy the pineal gland in people. And I followed the research on that, and amazingly what we found, the pineal gland is the most sensitive part of our central nervous system and is highly, highly, highly sensitive to 4 things: aluminum, glyphosate, fluoride, and Wi-Fi. And we are the only country in the world that has pushed these 4 things in the last 60 years or so on everybody growing up here. And so what I feel, what I observe, and what we're also testing on our ART system is that people have severely calcified pineal glands. And I show the anatomy in some of my courses. It's very clear that the pineal gland is a receiver for higher fields of energy and translates them into thought and into actually controlling our immune system, our endocrine system, and so on and so forth. There's all science, but very few people pay attention to science anymore, especially since Donald Trump and his disregard for science. It's become the new norm, and so it is astounding that the telecommunications industry has selected the frequencies out of the huge spectrum of frequencies that are absolutely destructive to our cells and especially to the pineal gland. You couldn't have made any better choices than 2.4 gigahertz. That the end point, that when you have inhale aluminum, as we do from the geoengineering program, and have glyphosate in the food chain, that glyphosate and aluminum combine in the blood and in the gut and in the bloodstream to form 6 different chemical compounds where aluminum and glyphosate are hooked up together, and the end point of that compound is the pineal gland. It's published, it's not my idea. And what is needed for this compound to actually enter the brain is to open up the blood-brain barrier, and the current frequencies in the Wi-Fi world are exactly doing that. They open the blood-brain barrier, so toxins that used to stay in the bloodstream and in the body below the neck are now entering the brain very freely. That applies to all toxins, and so it's a new time in that way, And so, when you think this through, you come to the conclusion that either there must have been an ultra intelligence group of scientists who have designed this protocol to fluoridate the drinking water, to put nanonized aluminum in the air, to put glyphosate in the food, and then activate it, spark it with the right frequencies. It took me 20 years to figure out the perfect storm that is created there. And it's either a coincidence, which is possible, that enough dumb people made the wrong choices, along the years. I'm still hoping that may be at least partially true. or it's orchestrated by a very, very intelligent group of destructive minds, or what I also believe is very possible, that there's some higher fields of consciousness that can be both tuned into the light and to life affirmative action, and can be absolutely destructive, like phenomena like Adolf Hitler and others, people that come under the influence of something absolutely dark and destructive. And I do believe it's very possible that enough scientists and politicians have come under that influence of those higher fields and are acting according to it, actually not knowing on a human level why they're doing what they're doing and what they're doing. You know, that they now a good example is 5G. You know, sort of to put it on posts, you know, along the streets. Okay, that's one issue, but putting it on satellite and actually the government approving to put it on satellite, I mean, blasting the whole planet with a frequency that has never been checked for safety, for its influence on the insects, on the songbirds, has never been checked for anything, and to approve that is unconceivable to like somebody who's still got a little bit of a brain left. And that politicians in the White House and other countries are conspiring with that can only be explained that their brains have come under the influence of some larger, higher field that cannot be human in nature, you know, because the human nature is always life affirmative and loving and wanting to live and make the biosphere more friendly to life. And so there is some scary thoughts about that, you know, but I'm still hoping, I'm still putting my weight on, let's hope it's just a coincidence and enough dumb people made enough dumb decisions, and if enough of us wake up and point it out to them, that there can be a reversal. You know, the Wi-Fi can be switched off in a second. We'd be done with that, and you know, glyphosate could be forbidden, you know, tomorrow. It's in the water table for many years, but there could be an end to it. You know, the chemtrail program could be stopped like that.
Now here's what's important. You have to regulate a balance, because obviously if you don't make enough of what? If you don't make enough of this norepinephrine, you're not going to make enough melatonin. And if you make too much of this can cause problems too, right? Because you have to find a happy balance, a happy medium with this norepinephrine, right? And that's the whole purpose here. That's what this suprachiasmatic nucleus is doing. Now, what does this melatonin go and do? Because whenever this is stimulating, this pathway is actually going to be this light pathway going to suprachiasmatic nucleus, paraventricular nucleus, lateral gray column, superior cervical ganglion, to the pineal gland. When it's occurring in light, watch this. I'm going to show this in red. There's very little melatonin, so very, very little melatonin being secreted during the daytime, right? During the light. But when it's in this darkness, all right, and it goes to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus receives these signals, sends it down through the paraventricular nucleus, to the superior cervical ganglion, to the pineal gland, and it releases more norepinephrine, and then therefore releases more melatonin. So in darkness, look what happens to the melatonin levels. You have higher melatonin levels. When there's higher melatonin levels, what does it do to the suprachiasmatic nucleus? It acts through different types of receptors and stimulates the suprachiasmatic nucleus to reset the biological clock. So what is it going to do? It's going to reset the biological clock. So in summation, what can we say is the function of the pineal gland? We can say the function of the pineal gland is to do what? To secrete melatonin. And what does that melatonin do? It regulates our sleep and wake cycle so it regulates what's called our diurnal cycle, or our sleep and wake cycle, via who? The suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is located in the hypothalamus. That's the whole purpose here. And what's stimulating this process of the pineal gland to make melatonin? This is stimulated by darkness. Okay, so darkness is one of the primary stimuli of the pineal gland, right? Via all this intracellular, all these actual other signals, right? But again, biggest overall concept to get out of this is that darkness works through different mechanisms to stimulate the pineal gland, to release melatonin, and that melatonin regulates your sleep and wake cycles by acting on the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And what does the suprachiasmatic nucleus do? It resets our biological clock through various complex mechanisms to help induce the actual drowsiness and trying to get you're getting sleepy, right? To be able to induce the sleeping process, right? So that's the purpose of the pineal gland. Whereas in light, it inhibits the pineal gland. It releases, so again, in light, what does it do? It inhibits the pineal gland, releases less melatonin. Less melatonin is actually not going, it's going to affect the regulation of the diurnal cycle via the suprachiasmatic nucleus by how? It's going to make you awake. So with this, you would actually be awake versus with the darkness, you would actually have sleep. Your sleepiness, right? So sleepiness. So this is how it does that, is that the pineal gland has indirect input from the actual visual pathway, and from that input, it can help to regulate our actual sleep and wake cycles via activating or inhibiting the suprachiasmatic nucleus, who will then control that by controlling our awakefulness or our sleepfulness, all right? All right, Ninja Nerds, I hope this made sense. All right, take it easy, Ninja Nerds.